Hi, everybody. This is Julia.
And this is Chris. And this is episode number 38 of the Mixology Talk podcast. And today, we're going to be talking about all about the ice.
All about the ice, about the ice, about the ice.
No liquor.
No. Well done. So, ice is possibly one of the most overlooked ingredients in a cocktail, but it's really super important.
Yeah, typically a shaken cocktail or a stirred cocktail, once you chill it down, is going to be about 20 to 30% water from your ice by volume. So the quality of your ice definitely is a big important factor in the flavor of your final cocktail.
Absolutely, and the way that you sort of get it into the drink matters as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What is it? Why do you care? And I think we're going to talk about how to make it shiny and pretty too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Love me some shiny, pretty ice.
Yeah, all you cocktail and ice nerds out there. This episode's for you.
All 5 of you.
Exactly. So the first thing, something that I wasn't aware of until a couple of years ago, is the difference between working ice and finishing ice, or the final ice that you're going to put in your cocktail. Now, I was always used to just shaking a cocktail and dumping it right into a glass with all the broken up ice and all. That's kind of how I learned how to bartend. But
in a barn.
I know, seriously. But once I came to San Francisco and started tending bar in San Francisco.
And got your butt kicked.
Yeah, it was a rough couple of years, I'm not going to lie. But they kind of explained the theory of why you use 2 different types of ice. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about right now, is the difference between working ice and the finished ice.
So working ice is, you also call it dirty ice too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
Finishing ice is the stuff that is actually in the final drink that you hand to your customer.
Yeah, the fresh, pretty ice that we all love.
Alrighty, so what's the difference? You're making a drink, like, does it come from a different bucket? Does it come from a different fjord?
No, it's all the same ice, but let's say you're making a margarita. You put all your ingredients in your shaking tin and you start to shake it up. When you start to shake that ice, little pieces get chopped off. The ice itself kind of breaks into smaller pieces. And when you're finally done shaking, the size of the ice cubes are considerably different. They're much smaller and there's a lot more of them. So a higher degree of surface area with that ice.
If you were to just pour that whole thing without straining into a glass and hand it to your customer, A, it's going to look terrible. B, it's going to dilute, it's going to continue to melt very, very quickly.
Right, exactly.
And we don't want that because we like our drinks at the optimal proportions, which is the moment that you pull it out of your shaker.
Right. So at that point, you would strain it into a glass with fresh ice, obviously, if you're using ice in a drink.
Finishing ice, I believe we called it.
Yeah, exactly. The fancy ice.
Fancy pants.
But yeah, you would fine strain it or strain it into that glass, and you would have really beautiful ice. Great cocktail, and it will stay colder longer is the theory.
That's the theory, it makes sense because of surface area and math and stuff. We already established a couple episodes ago that math is not my strong point, so I'm not going to get deep into this. But yeah, the theory is keep your working ice separate from your finishing or final cocktail ice, and I think it'll look prettier too.
Yeah, and there's a few exceptions to this rule, obviously. There are cocktails called built cocktails where you actually just build it on ice in a glass, and like rum and cokes, gin and tonics are a great example of just a built cocktail.
You basically just fill the glass with ice and then fill it up with the other ingredients, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not going to work for everybody. Like, you're not going to chill out your rum completely separate from your Coke and then put it back in the glass. I'm sure there's people doing it.
That's how I make mine.
Exactly. But a lot of people tend to build it right in the glass, hence the built cocktail.
That makes sense.
So now we're going to talk real quickly about the quality of the ice and why that's so important. Mm-hmm. And
using the stuff that comes out of your fridge.
Exactly.
Or
freezer.
Using the stuff that comes out of your fridge, it's probably not going to work very well.
No, probably not.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things to think about here. I don't know about you, but we have one of those fancy pants fridges that has the I don't know what you call it, but basically I can get ice cubes or crushed ice right out of the door, which is awesome.
It's pretty amazing technology.
It's true. And more importantly, the fridge is just constantly making ice, which is great because we use it a lot. But there's a couple things to think about. If you are like us and you have a home bar and you're making your ice at home and not in some, fancy restaurant, you're going to want to think about a couple things.
So the first thing is, depending on the type of fridge you have, it may not be filtered water. So it could actually really affect the taste of your final cocktail. If there's a highly chlorinated water, or if I lived in Vegas for a little while, and there is a lot of minerals inside that water, and that could really affect the quality of your drink.
Yeah, I grew up in the boonies, and our neighbors had really, really heavy sulfur content in their water, and you could smell it, and it was bad. So just something to think about. You know, all water is not the same, and the ice you build your cocktails with is the water that's going in the drink. So just like you wouldn't put a terrible vodka in your drink, don't put terrible water in there either.
Yeah. So and also if you're storing all your ice, obviously in the freezer where it belongs, but if you
not in the cupboard, don't store it in the cupboard
or in the fridge, but if you have something that's really fragrant in there, like last week's tuna or something, ice has a tendency to hold on to some of those aromas, so that could, once again, find its way into your
could be
final
problematic.
Cocktail. And I don't know if you're into that kind of thing.
Well, I mean,
maybe
I actually use tuna-scented ice for my tuna old-fashioned.
Oh, the tuna old-fashioned. Oh, that's a really good cocktail.
It brings a nice aroma. Like, it really finishes off. You know how you spritz the citrus on top of a drink?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just really tricky to spritz the tuna just right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about the bacon one, but no, the tuna. This is new.
I'll definitely put the... no, I'm not going to put the recipe in the show
please
notes.
don't. Oh man, that sounds horrible. But just be conscious of kind of what else is in that freezer. You don't have to go out and buy a separate freezer for your ice. Some people do. I know people that do.
No, Chris, you cannot have a separate freezer for your ice.
Okay,
absolutely not.
But the other thing is that there's a company that makes really fantastic ice molds. If you want to have that beautiful square piece of ice in your cocktail, or the really long ones for your Collins glasses, the company called Tavolo, I'm probably butchering the name, but they make really amazing ice molds that you can have in your freezer for when you're making really fantastic cocktails.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really great options out there. There's some really funny ones too. I think I saw an ice mold set where half of the molds were little icebergs and the other half were little Titanics.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh my God, I so almost bought it. But there's a lot of really good ones out there. I know there's a whiskey ball of ice mold in the shape of the Death Star.
Oh man, how come I don't have that one?
I know. I'm going to try to find the links and put these in the show notes. I'll put some wacky ones in there. But the thing to keep in mind, as funny as these are, is you do want to be a little bit careful because you don't want to go crazy with the surface area. Again, obviously, you're not going to use like Titanic icebergs for your working ice. That would be a little bit ridiculous. I mean, why not, right?
Right.
But actually, it would be a bit ironic with the little icebergs and the little ships hitting each other in the shaker. Think about surface area. If you're going to have like a really, like, for example, a Titanic or skull and crossbones shaped ice, you're going to get more surface area there than if you had just a solid cube.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about.
Yeah. And there's so many fun molds that you have to choose from, and just have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Use your imagination, and it could be a really cool kind of aspect to like a home bar, or even
absolutely
a specialty bar.
It's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. There's a lot of things we do to make a cocktail visually appealing in terms of color, in terms of sparkles, in terms of especially garnish, but I haven't really seen a lot of people play with ice.
Yeah. Now another one is actually hand crushing ice. This is kind of a nerdy thing to do. Yeah, they actually have special equipment for it, a Lewis bag and a hammer, and I mean it can be a lot of fun, and potentially take out a lot of your aggressions or anxiety
or glassware if you're not careful.
Exactly. It will add a whole new element to your cocktail, like a mint julep served over hand crushed ice is a fantastic cocktail.
So I'm sorry, I gotta ask. When I get crushed ice, I waltz up to my fridge, press a little button, and put the little glass under the thing, and magically crushed ice comes out. Mm-hmm. Is it really worth the effort to get the normal ice, put it in a, what do you call it, like a Steve
Lewis
bag? Lewis bag.
A tin bag.
Mash it up, and what's the difference? Broken up ice is broken up ice, right?
Yeah, the Lewis bag, what the Lewis bag does in theory is it helps to dry the ice out so you don't have really wet ice when it comes into your drink.
Okay.
So it's a lot drier, it's colder. That's the idea with that anyways.
Do you actually believe that?
I've never used a Lewis bag behind the bar.
Let's reach out to our listeners. If anybody out there knows the difference, and especially if you swear by hand crushing your ice, I would love to hear what you think. Let us know in the show notes. It'll be over at mixologytalk.com/38.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to find out myself.
Yeah, set us straight.
Yeah, please do. But this kind of brings up a whole other point of there's a lot of different restaurants and bars out there that their ice program is like next level. It's ridiculous. I know there's a couple places that actually have their own ice rooms where they break down 300-pound blocks of crystal clear ice.
With chainsaws, right?
With chainsaws, with bandsaws, with all kinds of crazy tools. And if anybody has seen those ice sculptures, that looks like a dragon or whatever, it's the same equipment that makes those ice, big blocks of ice. That's how they break them down. So they're just giant, giant blocks of ice.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so a couple of places that I know have done this is the ice plant out in Florida. There's a gentleman by the name of Zach Lynch that runs a bar program out there and does large format ice like this. Aviary, which is a famous bar.
Not surprised they're on the list.
Yeah, an amazing ice program.
They probably just charter a plane up to Finland or whatever, bring in their own glacier.
Exactly.
Which, you know what? That'd be awesome.
That would be pretty cool.
I'd be all over that.
There's another one, Half Step in Austin. I know they have a pretty amazing ice program there, and there's quite a few of them actually in San Francisco. I don't think they have dedicated ice rooms, but they have chainsaw. They have all these kind of barbaric looking tools they break ice down with. It's pretty amazing to watch.
It's actually, speaking of amazing to watch, every once in a while I will accompany Chris when he goes and meets with one of his bartender friends. And if they ever get on the topic of ice machines, oh my gosh, it's like they just walked into a toy store. There's all the, and they're speaking a language I don't even know. There's all these different machine names and like, oh my gosh, you got a Nakamichi 5000. I'm so jealous. So I don't know. I literally just made that name up. I have no idea. What was it? Cold draft ice?
Cold draft is kind of the industry standard for ice.
Isn't all ice cold and drafty?
It's the name of the company, and the cool thing about it is it actually makes the really dense ice cube, the crystal clear ones, in, I think they're like 1.5 inch or 2 inch perfect squares.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, it's really
So it's about the
ice.
shape then.
And dense, and it's colder.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just great ice.
Huh.
But it always breaks down.
We have, speaking of ice trays from way back earlier in this episode, we have ice trays that are square and they're silicone.
Yeah.
And we have little ones and big ones. And in my opinion, those are something great to have on hand because I think square ice cubes just look great.
Yeah, definitely. So those are the Tovolo ice cubes that I
they are.
earlier. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they make really amazing products. So definitely check those out.
So if you're going to be making ice at home, you're probably going to want it to be crystal clear.
Yeah. And
so how do you do that?
There's a couple people, one gentleman in particular that kind of started this whole focus on crystal clear and ice and how to make it at home. His name is Camper English, a.k.a. the Ice King.
Yeah, I think you probably already knew that.
But quite a few years ago, from my understanding, is he figured out a way to do this in any freezer with just a couple of extra pieces of equipment. And basically, it's just a cooler, an igloo cooler.
It has to do with the speed with which the ice freezes. Is that correct?
And the direction.
The direction.
Yeah. So
I like to freeze to the left.
Yeah. Imagine if you have your ice cube in just a standard tray. Mm-hmm. It's going to freeze from all the different surface areas inwards.
Right.
So what you have is typically that cloudiness right in the center of your ice. And that's because all the ice crystals, from my understanding, all the ice crystals are kind of going in different directions and never really line up.
They get trapped in the middle.
And there's also conversation about mineral content and everything else. So everything gets pushed right into the center, and then that's why it's cloudy in the center. So his idea was to have actually directional freezing, where it would freeze from the top down because all the other sides are insulated.
I see. So you slow the freezing process for all the sides and the bottom, leave the top open. It'll enforce, quote unquote, directional freezing. It'll freeze top down, and all that sort of non-crystal clear stuff gets squidged out the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's
the bottom of
term.
It's a very technical term. But all the bottom of your ice is going to turn cloudy or have all that kind of cloudiness, but everything on top of it is going to be that beautiful crystal clear ice, and you just have to break it down after that point. So yeah,
I learned something new today.
Yeah, there's actually a really good video by one of our friends, Brian Johnson at Better Cocktails at Home, and he kind of shows how he's done it in the past, and he uses really big blocks of ice, and you can break it down with just some simple hand tools after that.
Yeah, we'll definitely include a link to that.
Yeah, and the second way you can do this, if you really want to geek out.
Wait, what we just talked about wasn't geeking out?
Oh, it gets so much better. Take it from a geek here. There's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Liu. He's an author and blogger, and he gets really focused on cocktails and cocktail ingredients and the science behind it. And he recommends, or one of the ways he did it was to actually get a thermostat, a really exact thermostat, and attach it to your freezer. Mm-hmm. So the closer you can get to the freezing temperature of water and slow that process down, the more clear it's going to be.
Okay,
so if
that
it's
makes
0
sense.
degrees Celsius, if you can get it within 1 or 2 degrees of that 0 degrees Celsius, then you'll end up with.
But don't just keep
ice.
opening the freezer to check on it.
Yeah, you have to leave it. You have to leave it closed.
It's that patience part that always gets me.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Good to know.
Another interesting thing, but like I said, much more geeky and sciencey.
Nah, yeah, I'll give you that. That was more nerdy.
Yeah.
So like we talked about earlier, I think ice is part of the presentation of a cocktail. Well, I should say, if your final cocktail has ice in it. If not, not so much. But if you are going to be having ice in your final cocktail, there's actually some fun stuff you can do with it. One thing that Chris did, must have been 6 months ago, was he took some flowers from our garden and froze them into the middle of these square ice cubes we had and served that in a crystal clear drink. So the whole thing, if had the ice been clear, you wouldn't have seen anything at all. But because there were these beautiful flowers in it, it just made an incredible presentation. I think, if I recall, it was a real pain in the butt.
Oh, yeah. And you have to do a couple different stages. So you have to freeze the flowers in a small amount of water and then kind of cement them in the ice.
Yeah.
And then you can add your water over the top of that, freeze that.
So probably not something you can do in huge volumes, but man, if you can do it, I'll try to dig up that photo and throw that in the show notes too, because it was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely an eye-catching presentation, and I tried to see if I could do this for a restaurant environment, and it just was not feasible because you have to. It's very, very hands-on, and just knowing
And
how much
timing
ice
is
to
pretty
make.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it just was very prohibitive for me, and I think the main reason was the freezer was going to be on the 4th floor, and I was operating on the 1st floor. So if you ran out of ice, you're kind of
You're going to melt your flowers on the way down.
yeah, exactly.
If you do try this at home, don't forget to wash your flowers and don't use anything poisonous. And I don't want to go killing anyone.
Right, but you could do a lot of really fun things. So if you're doing like clear Bloody Mary or something like that, you could freeze a chili pepper inside your ice.
Ooh.
You know, you can get really creative with what you actually freeze inside your ice.
And actually, that totally I completely forgot about this. Do you remember the chai tea that you had? The blue chai
tea, yeah.
This is a really fascinating tea where, if I remember correctly, you brew this tea and I don't remember what color it starts as. It starts as blue.
Blue. Mm-hmm.
And then when the second it touches acid, it changes color.
To purple, yeah.
To purple. And it's really very vibrant. It's not like, I kind of see it change. No, it really changes color.
Like dramatically, like within a fraction of a second, yeah.
Yeah. And so what Chris did was he froze some acid in the middle of ice cubes. And it wasn't until enough of the ice cube had melted for that acid to be released. And so the cocktail changed color 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, and I tried to do a couple different variations on that. I tried to freeze the tea inside of the ice, too.
Oh, did you?
But I couldn't get it.
How'd that go?
Yeah, it didn't work out so well. But it was fun. And like I said, you could have a lot of fun with your ice and really have a great time. This doesn't even mention like punch bowls. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, if you're having a big party and you can freeze a bunch of like a big Jello mold.
There you go.
Put a bunch of fruit, inside your.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a delay release capsule in some ways.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun things you can do with ice. So yeah, let us know if you come up with anything fun.
Yeah,
and we'll definitely mention you in the future.
You got it. So thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully we didn't bore you senseless. For those couple nerds out there who enjoyed it, definitely let us know what you think. And I would really love to hear what you think of the Steve bag, Bob bag. What was it called?
Lewis bag.
Lewis bag.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lewis. So let us know over in the show notes at mixologytalk.com/38. And we will catch you next time.
Yeah, cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.